Hello, and welcome once again to the Mind Series. I'm Dr. Ryan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of Mind Matters Clinic, and with me for this episode are Susan D.X. Kearns, our Marriage and Family Therapist, and Linda Swedland, our Educational Specialist. And together we'd like to provide the listeners with some ideas and tools for working with individuals with ADHD and ADD as they return to school, this being the fall, and we know there's a lot of challenges in going back to school for kids with ADHD. And so we'd like to get together, kind of give some ideas and things that we have had success with in working with kids with ADHD. When I say ADHD and ADD, I use those terms interchangeably, so I'll just be using that one term, ADHD. When we work with kids with ADHD, oftentimes summertime is kind of a good time. It's kind of a reprieve for families who have a child with ADHD because the demands for them are lessened, and the kind of the unstructured time and being able to play outdoors, not having to be exactly anywhere on a certain time, and not being expected to stay in class and do their homework and things like that is a wonderful time, and it can be a wonderful break for families. Returning to school can sometimes then be a challenge because now they're faced with going back to something that isn't always easy for the child with ADHD. And that in turn creates sometimes hardship or stress for the family because parents also know that once the child goes back to school and has to start doing homework, that oftentimes the parent is kind of going back to school and then becomes responsible for things like homework and getting things done and getting organized and getting out the door on time. And that's frequently what we see with children with ADHD is that at home it creates a certain amount of stress because they do have difficulty getting ready. Typical thing being if you have 30 minutes to get ready for school, a child with ADHD will oftentimes have very little awareness as far as time passing and will spend the first 20 minutes doing who knows what in the bathroom, getting ready, wandering around, looking for this, looking for that, and then lo and behold, the alarm sounds, parents on the way out the door, and the child's not ready. They forget their homework, they forget their lunch, they have one shoe on, one shoe off, the wrong socks, that sort of a thing. And so it creates kind of a big problem getting launched. And then when they come home, same sort of a thing. Did they bring home the things they need, that sort of a thing? So it creates a lot of stress. So what we'd like to do is try to give you some tools. What are some successful things that we find works with parents and kids with ADHD? And to give you an idea just as far as organization and planning and some other tools that have been really useful, I'd like to turn you to Linda, and she can explain to you things that really worked well for her.
Thanks. Well, some of the problems that Dr. Thompson's talking about have to do with what's called executive function, and executive function is sort of an imposing name for a group of essential mental tasks that include things like planning, organizing our work, prioritizing, managing time, breaking tasks down into smaller components, paying attention to details, and focusing on that task until it's done. These executive function skills are usually real problematic for kids with ADHD and result in the things that Dr. Thompson talked about, just having a hard time getting out the door, getting homework done, etc. I think a good analogy for poor executive function skills is sort of like, it's like life becomes a roadmap without a roadmap, becomes a road trip without a map. You don't really know where you're going or when you're going to end up there. I think there's a lot of things parents can do to help, and one of the biggest things, I think, is to first of all remember that being disorganized, losing things, not getting tasks done is really usually a function of the ADHD. It's not that your child is trying to be lazy or willfully disobedient or disorganized or forgetful. It's a feature of the disability, and that's really important to remember and is often easy to forget too, so when you're in the midst of the chaos. Another important thing to do is we can teach them organization skills, and we can make our life more organized as well. Routines can be really helpful. We'll talk about those more in a little bit. But in terms of school, I think the big three things that are impacted are, I call them notebook pack and homework track. So we're gonna, does that make sense? Well, I hope it makes sense. As Dr. Thompson said, kids have especially as they get into middle school and high school, they have lots of things to keep track of between home and school and then back again. One of the big things you can do, and I know it's a little late now, school started, but when they need a new notebook or at the beginning of next school year, one thing you can do is go shopping with your student and help them buy something that will help them be more organized. Now this is just an example. I think they call this a tracker notebook, and it's not just like the old notebooks that some of us are used to, but it has, it zips so things can zip into it and not get lost. There's built-in pockets where I got calculators, highlighters, pens, sticky notes. There's a built-in file system in it, so you can put papers in according to different classes. You can zip it all shut. Notebooks like this are great, and if you and your student pick them out together, they'll have a little bit of buy-in there. I think part of that organization system too is you don't just buy it and give it to them and expect them to use it. You need to teach them to use it, and that means probably checking it every day with them to make sure that they're using it correctly. Another nice feature, of organization that you can tie into the notebook is color coding. I've done that a lot with students I've worked with. Different subjects get a different color and a label. All the work for that class goes in here. Then it can get filed into one of the little pockets in the notebook. Homework can have its own special folder. Homework, and what usually do to help kids organize their homework is one side is work I've got to do, the other side is finished work that you can help them get in there at night after their homework's done. I think it's important for kids to learn how to use what I call a homework log, which is stapled to the back of this, where they can track their homework. So, it's important to get the teachers buy-in on this too. They could initial it to make sure the kids have written down their assignments. It's all in one place then, gets put in the notebook, zipped in there, and hopefully back and forth to school. There's lots of different homework tracker devices out there. You can get free ones online. One of my favorite sources for free publications is called Free Printable Behavior Charts. Tons and tons of free stuff that you can download and print, or they're also really easy to make yourself, and I would really encourage you to do that to help your child become better organized. Some schools do require that your kids use planners, but if they don't, it's important to teach them that task. We all use calendars, planners ourselves to track what we do, and I think it's important to teach the kids that too. That homework tracker is an example, but there's planners where you could keep track of, or calendar pages, longer-term assignments as well. I think to make it fun, use calendars on your wall, track family activities. This is not supposed to be a pain. It's something that's supposed to make life easier. Again, as I said, I think you need to teach this. You're going to need to check in daily at first to make sure your student's using it. Again, make that fun, not oh gosh, let's check the notebook again, but a fun activity. Hopefully you can go down to check on a weekly basis. You also want to check that pack, help them organize the loose things in there, get them filed where they need to be in their notebook, throw away the things they don't need to be carrying back and forth. And another big thing about organization is identify a launch pad, if you will, a place where this stuff's going to be kept. Maybe when they first get home from school, it goes onto the homework table where they're going to be doing their homework. Later, when it's done, it goes into a basket maybe that's by the front door. Maybe everybody keeps their stuff in that basket so that it just becomes, again, a routine. So that they know before they walk out the door, they check the basket for their things, and then off they go. I have another little visual that I used that goes by that ready-to-go basket. This is for a younger kiddo. For school, I need my backpack, my lunch, my coat. They dig around in the basket till they find those things, and out the door they go. So just a few little tools to help your kid get organized, and they can be fun. It can be a really fun part of an evening with your family. Do you want me to talk a little bit about the homework thing now, too?
Let me underscore a little bit about the concept behind a routine. If a child has ADHD and they're having difficulty with their sequencing and completing a task and just focus, if they do something over and over day to day, and if they start to become distracted by something, if they become very, very familiar with the routine, it's much easier for them to come back to a routine that they're familiar with than coming back to saying, okay, where am I, what am I supposed to be doing, and not really having any knowledge or understanding of where they are in the process. If they've done the process enough, then it's just a matter of just kind of reminding them where they are in the process. Mm-hmm. But if they've never had that structured routine to go by before, then it's all like new information. And it's much harder for them to stay dialed in and focused. So oftentimes it is that routine that's important for them. And it is very important as the parent or the person that's working with a child with ADHD to remember again that this is not an intentional thing to get your goat, because it's going to feel like it. As a parent, you're going to think they're just trying to frustrate you, that they're really intentionally not putting on their socks and shoes in time just to make you mad. And you really do have to think ADHD as you're working with them, that you really are assisting them and doing something that's difficult for them. And sometimes when people use that analogy of if it was a blind person, would you hold the door open for them once, twice, or many times? And so if a child has ADHD and they're going to have some trouble being focused or staying on task, are you going to remind them once, twice, or many times? And we become more impatient with them the more times you have to say it, or do you just say, no, this is just part of the package? It's like letting a blind person in the door for the 100th time. That's okay. That person needs that kind of assistance. Your child may need that kind of assistance. So I think that's very important. Mm-hmm. And I think homework is very, very essential to talk about, because it is probably the most common area of conflict that I know about when I talk to parents and to families, and creates some really ugly evenings at home for a lot of people. So yeah, I'd love to see you give us some help with that.
Okay. Well, as you said, it can be incredibly frustrating for parents, the child certainly, and teachers as well. And it's really, really difficult for kids with ADHD. And one of the reasons is those executive functions again. If you think about homework, it is a whole series of things that you have to do, lots of steps involved, all involving those executive function skills of planning, organizing, prioritizing, staying focused, which are really, really hard for kids with ADHD. It gets even worse when kids get into middle and high school in terms of the expectations for homework. Lots of different teachers with different styles, different needs, that can be real problematic. So I think one of the first things that, if it is a problem in your house, that the parents can do is to meet with those teachers and talk about your concerns, the amount of homework perhaps. If it's appropriate, teachers can reduce the amount of homework or give extended time for its completion. We'll talk some more about that later. But I do have some tips to make it a little more predictable and stress-free, and we will talk about a homework routine too in a little bit. But just some tips that I found that have really been helpful is, pick a specific time for homework that is going to occur every day. Usually soon after the child is home from school is best, rather than later after dinner. This is what research has found. Maybe they need a little bit of downtime, or for a snack, or just to relax, or maybe a little bit of exercise too is good, but then soon after school is best. Make sure that study area is a permanent identified place for homework. Kitchen table can be good, or the breakfast bar in the kitchen, maybe a quiet study area in another room, usually not the child's bedroom. It's too isolated and there's too many distractions there. And you want to keep the area as free from distractions as possible, and clutter and pets and television. Some of the sort
cell
of
phone and computer.
Absolutely, screens. And I think that's another good thing. Set up some homework rules. And one of those, well, is starting time, but I think another real important one you just mentioned is there's no screen on and during homework time. Now, music might be a different thing. Sometimes some kids find very calming music helpful, or white noise, such as a fan going. Mm-hmm. But certainly no screens are off during homework time. Make sure that all necessary materials are there. Hopefully they have brought their notebook home, and it's parked on that homework table, so that's there anyway. And sometimes I encourage parents to make homework tubs that has in it all those things that they might need: scissors, pencils, colored pencils, pencil sharpeners, so that they're not always having to get up and find a tool. They need staplers, hole punches.
Because it becomes a real adventure. If your pencil needs sharpening, it takes you a half hour to find a pencil sharpener.
Exactly.
Because you get distracted by 100 other things.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So the homework tub's a really good idea. Some kids with ADHD, in fact, a fair amount of them like to move around a bit. Sitting still for long can be a problem. So if they need to stand at the counter to do their homework, that's okay, as long as they're working at it. Also, some students benefit from having a fidget item while they're working to manipulate with their hands, like a koosh ball. Other students
or their bracelets.
Or their bracelets can be more productive if they have something in their mouth, like chewing on a water bottle or a crunchy snack. snacks. Healthy, crunchy snacks can be helpful. Some kids need frequent breaks from homework. Don't expect your child to sit there for an hour, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. You can use timers. Analog clocks where the numbers are around in the circle, not digital, helps understand the passage of time a bit better, which is a difficult concept for a lot of our kids. I think, again, setting up this procedure with your teacher is real important. Lots of times we see the homework not getting from home. It's completed, but it doesn't make it to school somehow, or it doesn't make it into the right basket. Set that up with your teacher so that she has a routine at school as well, or he, where that homework goes as soon as the student walks in the door. Usually a certain basket that's well labeled and always stays in the same place. You need to be available, too, to check this homework, to give prompts if needed, to stay on task, and to reward your kiddo for working hard. That's really critical, too. As I said, we're going to talk about a homework routine a little bit when we talk more about routines, where we build some of these tips into a structure that you would use every day. Is that good?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect, thanks. In working with kids, in family life, homework becomes an issue even for kids without ADHD. Some parents become tired of a whole routine of, especially if they have more than one child and everybody trying to do homework and get it done. So the fact that they have to obligate time or extra time to stay with the child, to keep them on task, to keep them moving, only to find out that they didn't turn in their homework after all. After the parent spent an hour working with the kid to finish the homework, the kid gets all the way to school and then misses the reminder to turn in the homework, doesn't get credit for it, and then the teacher says you can't turn it in late, so they don't get any credit for it. So the parent becomes even more angry and frustrated because they've gone this extra mile to try to help the child, and then it still doesn't turn into any sort of fruition. So it does create a lot of stress, and it oftentimes becomes a very, very negative experience. And again, research showing kids with ADHD get 8 negatives for every positive response from a parent. So that starts to really take down the whole evening, and families start to really resent evenings rather than enjoy them. Family life should be a wonderful thing in the evening, after dinner, enjoying dinner, things like that, and instead it revolves around this whole negative experience of homework. And so I'm going to ask Susan to just kind of help us understand what the impact may be on family and how to avoid that.
So, as Linda was talking, one of the things that occurred to me is expectations. So since we're talking about making that transition, excuse me, from summer to school, I'd like to really encourage parents to have an expectation going in that this is what we're going to do. So a lot of times what we want to do as parents is think, this year it's going to be different. This year my child is not going to have ADHD. He's going to turn his homework in right on time, and we're not going to have any issues with homework or schedules or getting out the door or nighttime routine. I would encourage all parents to go in prepared. So to go in with the expectation that usually my experience with ADHD kids is the first couple of weeks, maybe the first month, they're actually okay. I think Dr. Thompson talks about new things stimulating that frontal lobe or something. He can talk about that more in a minute. But something happens with ADHD kids where it's new, it holds their attention, they can actually focus on their homework. That's what parents report to me. What I'm going to encourage is that you begin the routine and the structure then. You start out when they have all that energy and ability to focus with the notebook that Linda just described, with the at-home routine. So you come home, you have your snack ready, you encourage them, you give them a lot of positive feedback. Your expectations are lowered as a parent, as a mom. Perhaps you've prepared part of the meal the day before, or we sort of clear. I always encourage parents to, in their head, clear that hour, because if we're trying to cook dinner and they're needing our help and not able to stay focused, it's much harder for us to have that kindness and compassion and understanding with our ADHD child instead of resentment. Right. And so as far as keeping the stress level down in the home, I would say be prepared. Don't expect it to be different. I like what Dr. Thompson says a lot about think ADHD. This is a child in 3rd grade with ADHD. He's coming home, he's had to sit in his seat all day. What can I do for him? How can I support him? How can I connect with him and not, not immediately have to be on him for homework? And because it is difficult, having a child like this, research shows the impact on a family is pretty high, is pretty high. So how to lower that, how to have at least 10 minutes of, playing with him, and then, okay, we're going to sit down and do this together, getting him started. He's got all of his stuff, his bin, or she does. The other thing I think with coping and finding balance, and Linda's going to talk about this in a minute when she talks about setting a routine or a schedule, but to make sure that you have playtime scheduled in. These kids are at school all day. Recess is now about 15 minutes or something. They've had to sit in their seat and be uncomfortable in their body. They come home, and then if a parent expects them to sit there and focus on their homework like a neurotypical child, they can't do it. So scheduling in those breaks, scheduling in that time for a snack, scheduling in that time for play. I really do believe in clocks because I think they're helpful. So we've got 30 minutes for play, go at it. We've got 30 minutes for homework, we're going to focus, screens are off, I'm going to be right here with you. Okay, now, the next thing is we're going to cook dinner and you're going to get to help me a little bit, and then you're going to get to play. But really having clear expectations, I think, for everybody.
And also, beyond that, the expectation of how much homework is a fair amount of homework, and that's where
Right.
sometimes you have to go back to the school. I have kids who are in second grade and coming home and doing 2 hours of homework
Yeah.
because it takes them so long to get through it because they have focus and attention problems, and that's just torture.
Torture.
So they start to dread coming home. The parents dread them coming home because they're going to do 2 hours of homework. So if it does become something that is that destructive, you have to go back to the school and say, we got to do something.
And I think it's important to paint a picture, and you guys would be really good at this. One time a grandparent described to me his children, who he raised, they would come home, they'd go in the room, get their homework done in half an hour, and they'd be done. So when he had a grandchild who is now not able, is ADHD and distractible, he's just beside himself, not able to understand, thinks the kid's lazy, judges the child, when in fact he's got a disability, and how can we work with it? After teaching a child some of these strategies and the grandparent or parent, the primary caretaker working with the child, it's doable. It doesn't have to be as miserable.
And it's teaching them the strategies, but knowing there's still going to be
Right.
oftentimes support that's necessary on the part of the parent to carry it through. So,
Yes.
part of the basic things I always recommend with parents who have children with ADHD is making sure they do leave in the morning having eaten a good breakfast. And a good breakfast with a child with ADHD is a child who's eaten a high protein relative to carbohydrate breakfast. Multiple studies have shown improvement as far as function for children with ADHD when they eat a high protein breakfast. So things with nuts, cheeses, milk, meats, beans. It doesn't have to be a traditional breakfast, but avoiding things like pancakes, waffles, Pop-Tarts, or other things that might be easy and fast because the child has ADHD on the way out the door, trying to focus instead on the high protein breakfast. The other basic things, if it's never been tried before, is doing the food dye-free diet, because 15 to 20% of kids do seem to respond to restricting food dyes, and they will function better in school. And even though it's sometimes difficult to avoid the food dyes, it pays off big time if it works, because then everybody's happier because the child does better. And the last thing to mention as far as that is the exercise routine, is it's very, very important for them to continue to exercise because it helps them to focus and not to restrict their exercise when they come home or even at recess at school. So you can help us more with structure and routine?
Yes. Whoa, and I have to do it quickly. Routines and structures help all of us by making things predictable and helping to keep us on track. And research shows that kids especially thrive in environments where there's predictability, and that means consistent, clear routines. That's really true for kids with ADHD. And this doesn't mean that life has to become rigid or that you live in a straitjacket. It just needs to be consistent and predictable. They free us up then and keep the chaos away. So I think routines are great. I know we've got to talk quickly here. So they also help kids to learn to control themselves. They teach them to take charge of their own activities. I think for kids with ADHD, important routines should be around getting up, bedtime, homework time, screen time perhaps too. If you want to establish a routine, I think first of all you need to decide what tasks need to be done or what are the most problematic in your house, prioritize those. Make a checklist with your child of what the steps are and post it, make it visual. I think that's real critical. And then reinforce it with incentives until it's learned. An example of, say, an evening routine, and I made it visual here, is my evening routine, 7:30, unwind before bedtime. Again, try to get things calmed down before nighttime. Maybe there's reading, take a shower, pack a lunch, do some of those things that typically get done in the morning, do them the night before, so it's not so crazy the next day. You know, pack your backpack, put it in the ready-to-go basket, ready for launch the next morning. Set out my clothes for tomorrow. And eat a snack. Typically at nighttime, that high-protein snack is another recommended thing. Those can be the getting ready for bed pieces. 8:15, I mean, these can be the unwinding pieces, 8:15, get ready for bed. Put on my pajamas, put today's clothes in the hamper, brush my teeth, 8:30, lights out. This can become a routine if it's done every day, the parent reinforces it. It comes to a point, hopefully, where they're not going to be, the parent, you, doesn't have to nag the child at each step because they will have done this so many times that has become what we want it to be, which is a habit, okay? I have more routines to talk about, but I don't think we have enough time during this session, so maybe we can save them for another time.
We actually have 3 minutes.
Okay, would you like me to?
Tackle one more?
One more, okay. Well, as I said, let's do the morning routine. Again, that's when I work with parents with a lot because it can be such a problem, especially for secondary kids whose biological clocks are on a different schedule than schools are typically, so getting up is really hard. I think it's helpful if you get up 30 minutes before your kiddo does and get some of those things done. Use an extra loud alarm for your child. Don't you be the alarm, let a loud alarm be the one to wake them up. A routine could look like, again, make it visual, post it. 6:30, wake up, get out of bed. What does that mean? It means get dressed, eat breakfast. You have 10 minutes of outside time. A lot of kids benefit from that. You brush your teeth, you wash your face, you comb your hair, you feed the dog. That's in this routine I made up. If above are done, then you can pick one, watch a video, read a book, play on the computer. Keywords there, it's in the posted routine. If all the above are done, then you can do these other things. Okay, until the timer goes off at 7:30, then get your lunch, get your stuff out of the ready-to-go basket, and go out the door. If you do that regularly, you have it posted, it's visual. Your kids really, truly can learn how to do this. Consistency, clear expectations, that's the critical piece in routines.
And again, if you're communicating the same thing over and over again, to remind them to bring them back to the place, the expectations have already been set. You're just bringing them back into the fold.
Exactly. And it's visual, so you could cue them in visually. It's not just transient like your words.
Or they can do it themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. So those are some basic ideas we have, and obviously we could go on for another hour just for
I'd
the
love
more
to.
ideas we have. Yeah, I'm sure we could. But that's all we can provide for this session. We'll be following up with another session regarding things that can be done in the school setting for children with ADHD. And certainly if you have more questions and you'd like to come visit us or have Linda work with you directly, have her suggest ideas for you, then we'd be glad to see you. Come on in. And that's what we'll provide for tonight. So once again, we're Mind Matters Clinic. We're in Murphy's, California. We are a nonprofit organization, and you can support us any way you'd like. Thanks.